Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Fic Fiction, a magical bookish podcast for chaotic story goblins like us. This week's episode, American Thanksgiving, but make it bookish, because we know it's going to be Thanksgiving for a lot of us this week. So we want to discuss the good and the bad in the books that we've read this year. We are your hosts, Crimson,
Molly, and Ali. Well, hello, everyone. How are you both?
Good. How are you?
I am good. It's nice to be back for the third episode. What I thought we would do is similar to the last episode, is to talk about how our week has been. So I suppose, Molly, I'm going to start with you this time, because I think I started with Crimson in the last episode. How has your week been? What have you been up to?
So fucking busy. It's been so busy. So busy. So obviously I work, and my first half of my week is always a nightmare. So I teach from like 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. And on the Monday, I decided, it'd be a really good idea to go see Saba Tahir at her book signing for Air in Bath. But that was before my schedule had been finalised. So little me had to take my very tired ass from Bristol to Bath in less than an hour to get there on time for the signing. I made it, but I was knackered because I didn't get home till like nearly 11. And then Tuesday, it was Stephanie Garber's online event for Spectacular. So I sat in on that one after work as well. And then in terms of reading, I finished 4 books during Vampathon, which I mentioned in last week's episode. So I actually got through Fangs by Sarah Anderson, which admittedly was a reread, and it's like a graphic novel. It's super cute. Highly recommend. I read Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu, who is a classic author, and it was actually released before Dracula, and arguably it was highly more entertaining than Dracula. It gives all of like the vampire sapphic vibes. It was excellent. I highly recommend that one too. I also read Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and I am obsessed. I could not fault it. It was excellent. And I also read Blood Moon by Gillian Graves. So had some really good reads. Yeah, I also started Twilight, but I am on a pause now to let you guys catch up.
Yeah.
we'll get to that.
But yeah, what about you, Crimson?
Yeah, speaking of Twilight, so it's also been very busy for me. I also have a full-time career, and work has slowed down compared to last week, but it's very busy for me because I'm working on some training and things like that. So kind of bettering myself a bit at work. So I've been pretty preoccupied. And if anyone has seen my TikTok this week, I know it's coming out a few weeks later, but you definitely saw that I went fully off the rails. I have not made more Fourth Wing progress, but I did almost finish Leather and Lark. One of my friends randomly started reading Butcher and Blackbird, even though our group kind of read it months ago, and she loved it so much she went straight into Leather and Lark, and I was like, oh, I'll buddy read it with you because I haven't read it yet. And yeah, that's all it takes to ruin my discipline, is one person being like, hey, do you want to read this? And then as far as Twilight, I have had quite the saga myself trying to hunt down this book that I've read before. So obviously I moved to Europe last year, so all of my books are back in the States, in a box somewhere. And I thought, like, I'll just go to my bookstore that I always go to, and they usually have the Twilight books. I've seen them there multiple times, and I'll just pick all 4 of the mainline series up, and hopefully they'll also have Midnight Sun, and it'll be fine. Nope. They only had the New Moon through Breaking Dawn. They had a copy of Twilight, but it was previously spine cracked somehow. So that was cute. I went to 2 other stores, and they just didn't have it at all. And because I live in Paris, there just really aren't that many English language bookstores. Friendly PSA to anyone listening: if you have a friend who reads books in English, but they live in a European country that doesn't really speak English, they're having a very different time than you are when they go to buy books. It's quite the adventure. So it hasn't been easy, but I did finally break down and order the paperback box set that includes all 7 books. That'll be here in a couple weeks. And finally, I went back to that same bookstore, but a different location, and they had a copy. So
Score.
I will be starting with you, and then I think we're going to do something fun with this copy when I'm done with it, because it's not going to match the others. And yeah, so we'll have more about that on a later episode probably. It's been book hunting this week.
It's like taking the hobbits to Isengard. Are you trying to find this freaking Twilight book?
Real. I mean, I've just been messaging both of you all week. Like, I went to the store and I didn't find it. I went to the store, I didn't find it. And what's strange is I thought, like, I can just get on Amazon and order the hardbacks. But actually, in France, the hardbacks just don't seem to exist anymore, even though I saw them like 6 months ago. So I will, however, be in the United States soon for a little family trip. So I'm going to see if Barnes & Noble has them, because they did last time I was in the States. So we'll see.
How many Twilight books are there?
7.
Mm-hmm.
Not including the illustrated guide. So 8. Also.
So there's Twilight, Midnight Sun,
Yeah.
Life and Death, New Moon, Eclipse, The Short Second Life of Britannia, and Breaking Dawn.
And then also the illustrated guide with all the lore.
Yeah, because I am looking. I'm going to have to order them too. I'm in the same boat as Crimson in the way that I haven't ordered them. I remember my parents bought me the Twilight books when I was younger, and I had these beautiful white copies with red.
Yeah, they haven't done
like
the additional
edges
books since then in white.
There is a white box set on Amazon, and I think I might get them because I like the white ones. But I think there's the Life and Death one isn't in it.
Yeah.
But I might just read that on one on my Kindle.
So Life and Death, though, is a bit optional. It's the one that it's the exact same as Twilight, but it's gender bent. Everybody's gender is swapped. Or it's supposed to be the same as Twilight.
Yeah. There's obviously quite significant plot deviation in Life and Death, but yeah. I mean, I
think I might buy the box set.
I got it as like a 12th anniversary, because obviously it was released as like a 12th anniversary like celebration, and I've got the hardback where one side is Twilight and then you flip it upside down and it's Life and Death. So
that's really cool.
Yeah,
that is really cool. Actually, thinking about that, I think I'm gonna order it. I might order it tonight, because the paperback, you can get the paperback copies, I think, on Amazon for like £35 for like 6 of them. It's just
that's pretty good.
So yeah, so I ordered. So you can get the white set with either 4 or 6, or you can get the black set with the really large font. And if you get that one, you can get all 7 that match. So that's what I decided to do. And then I'm probably going to end up buying them all again in hardback, because I do love the hardbacks. Actually, I think the original covers are the best covers.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't like on the original paperbacks, at least on the European ones, that they have the little atom thing at the bottom. I think it's ugly. I think it really kills it.
So that was the European publisher. So I've got the original hardbacks from when I lived in America.
Yeah.
And they're published by Little Brown Books. So they have a completely different like publisher, and it's not as obnoxious, whereas the UK and European publishers are freaking massive on the spine.
They're like this with other books too. It's not just Adam. The French version of the Harry Potter books only come in paperback, and they have a really ugly like stripe on the side that's about
really
being part of the series. Yeah. I don't think I have one handy, but I'll show you guys later. But it's really it's not cute. I don't like it.
I think I found my new book ick.
Yeah, little publisher things that are super distracting on the spine. I hate it. But I do love that this part is actually like shiny on the spine. That's really cool.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I guess people are probably just listening. So on the spine of the paperback Twilight, there's the apple in the hands. They have it on the top of the spine, and that part is shiny while the rest is matte. So anyway, yeah. So I've not made any progress on anything I was supposed to make progress on this week, is the TLDR of all that. But I am having a good time, hanging out with serial killers. So.
That's the dream.
And what about you, Ellie? How's your week been?
I've been really busy. I've kind of been in a similar situation with work, that work has just been manic. I have been so busy. I've been operating on, I want to say, 110 steam ahead in work this week. So I've been really, really tired. I have managed to read An Education in Malice. So that was on my list last week that I really, really wanted to get that done. I loved it. I would say that I loved it. I gave it a 4-star. It wasn't a 5-star book for me. I feel like I'm sort of exiting my dark academia era now. I find myself really, really, really craving reading Fourth Wing again. But I have figured out that if I read 5 chapters of Fourth Wing a day, and including Iron Flame, if I start on New Year's Eve, I can finish it the day before I get my delivery of the next book. So I'm trying to hold out really, really quickly. So I think I'm in the mood for an enemies to lovers. I think that's where I want to be at the moment. So I read An Education in Malice. I finished the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore as well. That was really fun. And my mum was here. So my mum came here and I took her to see a concert, and it was really nice spending time with her. So I know that I wasn't able to read an awful lot that week, but I did read, and I did start, and I have it next to me, so anyone who's watching this rather than listening will see this, but I did also start this book. So this is The Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle. And this has been on my list for a while because Catherine Doyle is one of the writers of the Twin Crowns series, and I love everything that she writes. So this isn't enemies to lovers. It's about almost like 2 gangs. You've got the thieves and the assassins, and the thieves can't kill anyone and the assassins can't steal anything. That's like the whole premise of them like operating together. And the main character's mum dies, and she goes and joins the thieves, and I'm pretty sure it's like an enemies to lovers with someone from the Assassins Guild gang. I don't know, but it looks really good. I'm not very far into it, but I'm really enjoying it so far, so I'm excited to read that one and finish that one.
All right, then. I think let's jump right in. I think our first topic today is maybe the most in the spirit of what American Thanksgiving is supposed to be. Of course, American Thanksgiving's quite a complicated holiday. It's full of contradictions. On the one hand, giant nap-inducing meal and football game are always fun, but arguing with your uncle about politics across the table, not so fun. Not to mention the super questionable history. But we do at Thanksgiving in America try to remember to be thankful for everything we have. And a very common and eye-rolling tradition that I don't know if you guys know about is you go around the table as you're eating, and you're supposed to say what you've been thankful for this year. So in order to bring a little bit of Thanksgiving to our little pod, I thought, why don't we say what books came out this year that we are thankful for? And I think, Allie, you're up first.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. I love that this is the topic this week. I would have never thought to do this topic, but I suppose having someone who is our honorary American in the chat, this has been a really good thing for this week. So having a look, books that came out this year that I'm really thankful for. House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I just love her. It's always nice to have a new Sarah J. Maas book because sometimes they are few and far between these days. Mm-hmm. It is hard to get your hands on a new one. I also really, really loved Lore of the Wilds by Annalise Brana. It's probably one of my top reads this year. The 3rd book in the Twin Crowns series came out by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber, so that was really good to finish up that series. Tempest of Tea as well, and The Spell Shop. I've been really into a cozy fantasy vibe this year, but A Tempest of Tea and The Spell Shop have been... I think about The Spell Shop daily. See, if you love Stardew Valley, you need to read The Spell Shop. That's all I'm going to say. It's perfect. It's perfect. Amazing. 2 other books that I honestly cannot stop thinking about are Metal Slinger and Quicksilver. I know that they've been quite popular. Quicksilver was really popular across TikTok, and I didn't want to read it at first, but then I picked it up and couldn't put it down. It's quite a big chunky book. And Metal Slinger, I'm not going to say anything about that book, but for both of you guys, if you haven't read it, I know I've screamed at Molly that she needs to read it, but you guys need to read this book. You've got to get on there. It's amazing. Okay. So good. What about you, Molly?
So similarly to you, Ali, I'm also thankful for House of Flame and Shadow. As you said, having a new Sarah J. Maas book is always a blessing, even though it does make you think about, you know, the other books that she has to release, and we don't know when those are happening, but we're not going to get into that. So yeah, House of Flame and Shadow, Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which obviously I only just read last week, but I'm hooked, I'm obsessed, and I believe there will be a second one, if I am not mistaken. It ends on a particularly interesting, piece of information, shall we say. So I am very excited to get that perspective. Naughty or Nice by Sophie Snow, who is an indie author. she has just released it as an arc and it comes out this month. But I read it as a beta reader and it's giving all the Christmas cozy vibes, but it's also extremely smutty and makes you think about things that you never really thought you'd be into. But I'd highly recommend checking that one out. Empire of Shadows, which I believe I mentioned in the last pod, which was essentially like a adventure novel inspired by Indiana Jones and The Mummy and Atlantis, but with a suffragette heroine. And Rivalry of Hearts by Tassonja Odette, which was a cozy fantasy with a human author who ends up in like an enemy's rival situation with a fae poet, and it's just so cute. They're going on like a book tour together and chaos ensues. It's just fantastic. I highly recommend.
That does sound good, actually. I might put that on my list.
So good. What about you, Crimson? What are you thankful for?
Well, it might surprise nobody that I am also thankful for House of Flame and Shadow. I know that in my reviews, which were quite extensive, I did have a lot of nitpicks and a lot of things that I complained about, but I am still so grateful for the book. It was such a great read. And I also take a weird amount of joy in watching all of the crazy fangirl theories just get taken down a peg because she went in some wildly different directions from what some people were expecting.
It was wild.
Yeah, I think that was especially fun. Yeah, and of course makes me look forward to the next one. I'm very nervous for ACOTAR 6 because I have very mixed feelings about ACOTAR 5, so we'll see what happens, but as of right now, I'm just happy that we had a cool Crescent City and also very interested in what she's going to do with, presumably there will be a fourth book for Crescent City, so we'll see.
Yeah, because there's four houses, so you would assume. I don't think
she's pointed that out herself too.
Yeah, I don't think that the next book will be about the main characters in the normal Crescent City. I think it's going to be almost like a spin-off, and I think due to the fact that it is the name of it, it's the water one, isn't it? So I think that it'll be about one of the main water characters plus someone else who I think will work quite closely with them. I'll explain that to you guys off the pod at some point.
Are we thinking the two that share? Are we thinking the two that share the one brain cell between the two of them? Like pass it back and forth?
The two boys?
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Listen,
thought so.
All I know, my only prediction is that Ethan is still going to be thinking about how he used to be a Sunball captain. That's
100%.
Yeah. I definitely think that the fourth book, like without naming like actual names, I think it's going to be about Fishman and Wolf Boy.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
It's giving Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Yeah.
Truly,
Wolfman and
truly.
Sharkman. I don't know.
Yeah. Also grateful for Bride by Ellie Hazelwood. It was such a fun time. I read that at a time this year when I really needed a break from super intense fantasy. I did the Throne of Glass read right before Crescent City 3 came out, and then I read Crescent City 3 in 4 days because I was so determined to get my reviews up with everybody else. And it was a lot, okay? Like it was
You
a lot.
needed that.
And then it was not long after that I read Bride, and it was just such a nice break. It is such a perfect paranormal rom-com vibe. Love a marriage of convenience trope. It's one of my favorite tropes. So it was really, really great for me. And it's also the first Ellie Hazelwood book that I read. And now I still haven't read more, but there's several on my shelf now that I'm about to dig into. So really excited for that. I am also grateful in a similar vein to Five Brothers by Penelope Douglas. I am a big Penelope Douglas fan, and while I don't think that Five Brothers quite lives up to the hype of like Devil's Night or Credence, I do think that Five Brothers was a really fun read if you just sort of suspend your normal reality, because they are really goofy and in the Florida. It's all really silly, but I had a great time reading it. And then there are some indie books that I'm grateful for. I read Moth Manager recently by Luna Cantrip. That was a rare, random find on TikTok, and I had the best time. You really need a little monster romance like dashed into your life every now and then. So definitely recommend that one. And then I have 2 indie books on here that are done by friends of mine that I am just like so proud of them because they're both debut novels. The first is Price of Innocence by S.J. Taylor. It is a new adults French mafia in America kind of vibe. Not exactly enemies to lovers, but slightly. And it is really a fun story and a fun concept. I also really enjoyed Fate's Tether by Jade Neoma. It is a really cool high fantasy romance that is actually like really focused around domestic violence as well. And she also donates some of her proceeds to domestic violence organizations to help women. So that is also a really cool read to check out and also just so well done. So those are definitely the books that I'm grateful for this year. I can't wait for next year. There's a whole crazy amount of books coming out in the next year that I'm just like dying to get my hands on.
It's amazing. We've got a lot to be thankful for.
We do. We do.
We
At least in the
do.
bookish world. The rest
For
of the
sure.
world might be on fire, but the bookish world, we're thriving, I think.
We're thriving over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
The pages they're fine, but the earth's on fire, you know?
I think Allie might have a game for us.
I
Ooh.
do, yeah. I actually have a quick question for you guys, just off the back of something Crimson said about you
Okay.
saying that your marriage of convenience is like your favorite trope. Molly, what is your favorite like book trope? What is the one that you gravitate towards the most? Because I didn't know that about you, Crimson. I thought that was really interesting.
So it honestly, it's a like a toss up between fated mates. I love a good fated mates trope, and Grumpy Sunshine. Like I just love a good Grumpy Sunshine book.
Ooh.
It just fills me with joy. Like if it's just Grumpy Sunshine, if it's reverse Grumpy Sunshine, I'm just having a good time.
Love
I think
it.
what's interesting is like I didn't know that I loved marriage convenience so much until like last year. And I think I love it differently now that I'm actually married, maybe, because it's just such a good plot device. Like, I feel like you can just take any ridiculous scenario that you have really like no plot for these characters and you can just throw them into a marriage of convenience and it sort of works like enemies to lovers, but like a little more believable in the sense of like it totally makes sense why it's a slow burn. It totally makes sense why they're being weird with each other. It just kind of puts everything in like this really fun framework that gives them an excuse to be kind of silly. So I kind of love it.
Interesting.
But what would your favorite be?
I feel like I have to be an enemies to lovers girly.
That's fair.
I feel like every enemies to lovers book that I read smashes. Like I'm the favorite, and I know that Fourth Wing isn't. It is an enemies to lovers a little bit, but it's not like the whole premise of the whole thing. But maybe that's why Fourth Wing smashed it so much for me, and that's why ACOTAR, because it wasn't really an enemies to lovers, but it was like this should be your enemy to lovers.
I like
and
that,
the same thing,
sure.
like even with the Dagger and the Flame that I'm reading right now, like enemies, like I swear to God, like you give me an enemies to lovers, it's probably going to be a 5-star book for me.
Valid.
I was gonna say another trope though that I think is elite that is more of a micro trope is the one bed at the end will always get me.
Always.
I will always love a one bed.
Yeah,
Whether they
sure.
do anything or not, just the tension is always just sparkling in one bed.
Yeah, I agree.
My favorite, this isn't a trope. I would suppose this is like a scenario that happens more than a trope, is always that, you know, when she's like standing against a wall and he says something like really like out of character. He's like hand against the wall and he like says something and you're like, ah! Like, even if nothing happens, you're like, oh my God, like there's,
you know, for me.
Like, we'll speak about it later, but like Reckless, like the Powerless, the third book of the Powerless series. I didn't enjoy that book that much, but there's this thing where they're like on the roof of a building and it like sent me, but like that's like I was like, oh my God, like I just love a bit of tension.
So I think I can say this without spoilers. In Leather and Lark right now, there's all this tension building, and they're all like holding back and holding back and holding back, and that's why Marriage of Convenience is wonderful, because they're all holding back. And then there's a moment where he just like slams her against a wall, and it's like,
yeah,
like
dream.
elite.
Excellent vibes. Love it.
Anyway, yeah, I have a game for you guys. I thought we would play a little bit Who Would You Rather. So this is either who would you rather date in terms of fictional characters, or who would you rather like kiss, make love, fuck, I don't know, whatever way you want to put it. So not naming actual characters specifically, but if you have, it's fine. But just would you rather date a fictional character who does this, or someone who does this?
Okay.
Molly, your laugh
Right.
makes me want to. Molly's going first. That laugh is vicious.
Okay, so would you rather date a fictional character who kisses you against your will to prove that you're actually in love with him, or a fictional character that won't let you touch him at all but has a red room of pain to be used on you?
The way I immediately know who both of these characters I think the first one, but maybe I know too much.
Okay.
I think the second one, because I'm a pillow princess and don't want to do any work anyway.
Oh, yeah, okay. I don't think that's gonna let you be a pillow princess.
No,
He's gonna make you work for it.
I'm pretty sure he's going to make you work
maybe
for
not
it then.
then. Oh no, I swapped my answer then. And whatever's the least amount of work.
Grey, right?
100% Christian Grey in the second one,
Yeah. Yeah, that guy, he's got a weird sense of how that's supposed to work, so I don't think I want to.
Nah.
I assume, is the other one, I mean, which one? Like, that could be a couple different fictional characters, but
It could.
I assumed Jacob, and I'm
It
okay
could
with Jacob.
it could be Jacob, which, you know, to like 12-year-old me would have been like the end of the world. So
It's true, but to adult me, Jacob was an okay choice. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I choose Jacob over Christian Grey any day. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got mine. Would you rather date a character who refuses to sleep with you or even French kiss until marriage, or, and I actually don't think you guys have read this one, or bullies you constantly because he doesn't want you to take your rightful throne that, by the way, you don't even want? But the tension's hot in the second. The tension's good, but he's really mean.
The second one. I love a mean man.
The first one, because I don't like when men are mean to me, only women. So like it hits different, okay?
Okay.
It's like a completely different kettle of fish when a man is mean to you. Like, if a man is mean to you, you put him in his place. But like,
I'm sort of like, the man can be mean to me as long as the tension is high.
Yeah.
so the first one is obviously Edward, isn't it? So
Yeah, it is. So does it change anything for you? I'm just like taking the game off the rails. Does it change anything for you if the second one is also a dragon shifter?
nah.
No.
Okay.
That in my mind is better, because then I can ride him to the shops to get groceries.
No, that's I'm into it. I this is my favorite character in Zodiac Academy is who this is. So
I need to read that series. I've
So
read
do
like half
I.
of the first book and DNF'd it, but I've heard that I need to get through the first book.
you have to keep going. Yeah. I mean, I'm only on the third one, but I'm living. It's like fun. And you have to like kind of like, listen, there's grammar problems, okay? There just are. You just have to like kind of get over it and be like, it doesn't matter where the commas are. It's really fine.
Are we adding another series to our infinite list of buddy reads?
Yes.
Great.
Cool.
What are
Cool.
you talking about? We're really killing it with Twilight. I think we can add as many as we want.
Due to the fact I
Slay.
haven't started Twilight, and I'm pretty sure I'm 4 days behind. How many
Same.
chapters am I behind?
I'm halfway through.
No, this
She
is
stopped
Belladonna
to
all
wait
over
for
again.
us.
I
She
stopped to wait for you. But I was
Right,
I
I
was
will
I was on the
order-
Cullens chapter, so you know that took resolve.
It's okay, Allie. I only bought it yesterday. We're fine.
I will order them tonight to arrive tomorrow.
You better.
I'm so sorry. Oh God, threatening me? Are you?
Yes.
Yes, please.
who's your would you rather?
Yeah, so the options I picked, they're not based on actual fictional characters like you guys have. They're more just like things I've seen in books, or like I was thinking really like what would give me the ick the most, and then I'll put those two things against each other. So
Valid.
would you guys rather date a fictional character who throws a tantrum at every minor inconvenience? So I'm talking like foot stomping, screaming, sobbing, rolling on the floor, like maybe he didn't get what he wanted for dinner and this is the reaction that he has? Or would you rather date a fictional character who wouldn't let another man talk to you without causing a full-blown fight, whether that's with you or like fighting the other person,
The second
like your
one.
brother?
Second one, 100%.
Second one. Yeah.
The first one's too Tamlin for my taste. I can't do it.
I was thinking about him, like at that time I was thinking about when he like smashes all the furniture in the house.
Yes.
And look, I don't talk to people anyway, really. So it wouldn't
Yeah.
really make much of an impact on me.
And it's giving mafia vibes. Like, I
Yeah.
can roll with it. It's giving, like, don't touch my wife. Like, I'm okay with it.
We love
It's
that.
fine.
We live for it. It's all
Okay.
good.
I said the same thing as you guys. I think I would rather. I mean, it wouldn't be great if he like fought my dad every time I wanted to have like a phone call with him or like wanted to, you know, could you imagine the family events?
I don't go to
True.
them, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Totally.
suppose if you're not a family person, you're all right.
Imagine, like, you literally never have to speak to a man again, though. Like, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Never have anything mansplained to you.
It's a wee bit like the family event thing, actually, going back to that a second. Like, in the family event, like, so it's either they fight your family, the males in your family, when they try to speak to you, or they just start rolling around on the floor sobbing in front of your family.
Nah, fam.
No, the sobbing I can't do. The sobbing.
No. I'm
The foot
emotionally
stomping.
unstable by myself without adding more to the mix. So,
We
like,
need no whiny men here. Thank you very much. Do you know, it also imagines like Tamlin, and Chaol's the other one that I can imagine doing this. Like when he doesn't get his own way, you're like just lying on the floor, like a beetle on his back, legs going.
Imagine how Kale would be if someone he's with is spoken to by their dad, and maybe the dad says something like kind of judgy, but it's just like dad stuff. Like he's gonna have a meltdown. And
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like it's so unnecessary. Just leave it alone and leave. Like whatever.
So I do have one extra one for you guys. I prepared an extra one.
Okay.
I love a bonus.
Go for it.
So, would you rather date a man who would kill your entire family just so he's the only person in your life? Or would you rather date someone that's so caught up in the heroism of whatever's happening that he forgets your birthday, but remembers everyone else's?
Ooh.
First one.
Yeah, like he cares. Like he cares about you. He loves you. You're the center of his world. Meanwhile, the other one like
Yeah.
forgets your birthday and he remembers everyone else. Like you are literally the lowest on the priority list for him. Like fuck
Yeah.
that. No.
That's the guy who would sacrifice you to save the world. No, thank you.
Exactly.
I
No.
don't want-
You want a
So
guy
what
that will
I'm
sacrifice the
hearing-
world for you.
Yes.
Is that you would let your husbands kill me so you could get a birthday present?
What's
Well,
the
lucky
present?
for you, he doesn't really know where you live, so it's fine.
That's true. I'm safe for now.
What's
it's-
the present?
it's-
Is that what you said, Molly?
Yeah. But also
So my
it's-
life is based on what you're getting gifted for your birthday.
It's all
Wow.
good. Isaac only knows Georgia, so he wouldn't be able to find you even if he tried. So you guys are safe. Okay? Like, we know that.
Okay.
Let's move on to the second topic. It fits in quite well though. We've talked about all the books that we are grateful for and we are thankful for. How about some of the books that we've read this year that we aren't grateful for? The ones that really put us through it, the ones that made us miserable, angry, so on and so forth. Let's start with Ali.
Oh, okay. I have a few that I have read this year. The first one on my list is the series What Lies Beyond the Veil. I got it for my birthday last year and I read it this year and it was really boring. And there's nothing more to be said because I don't even remember what happens, but it was super boring. There's no tension in it. All of everything in there I've seen before. There was nothing new and I was bored. I understand why people like it. I suppose it depends. Like, I feel like if I gave it to my sister, she would probably really like it, but she doesn't read a lot in this genre. And I feel like how much you read will impact how much you enjoy that book, because if you've seen it all before, then you're not going to enjoy it, but if you're reading it and you haven't really dealt with it before, you might like it.
Yeah.
The next one is, this is so sad, but it's Leigh Bardugo's new book, The Familiar.
No way.
I was so sad because Six of Crows, I will never stop talking about that book. That duology is my entire life. I didn't really enjoy Shadow and Bone as much, but Six of Crows is like my thing. It's my baby. I would die on that hill forever. I would die for those characters. And even, I mean, Leigh Bardugo's, she's had other books out, and I really, really enjoyed them, but for some reason, I just didn't like The Familiar. The story was okay, but I feel like it wasn't very climatic in the end. I just wasn't with it. And I probably will reread it at some point. I like the premise of the story, but I feel like it just wasn't executed the way that gripped me enough.
That's unfortunate.
What else? Couple of books that are really highly rated: Song of Achilles and Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. I didn't like either of those books.
That is unfortunate. I mean, I totally get it.
I'm curious why you didn't like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, because I haven't read it, but it's right behind me. So
I think it's actually right behind me somewhere too. So I don't know whether it's just because I just didn't enjoy the genre. Maybe it just wasn't the right book for me, because whenever you're reading a book and you can tell why people like it, but you just don't.
Yeah.
I think I prefer hot and heavy, fast-paced fantasy, romantasy, enemies to lovers, like whatever. There was no tension in that book. Same with like Song of Achilles. It just wasn't there for me. I found it really boring, but I could see why other people really, really like it.
Yeah, I get that.
So
it's definitely not the best of her books in terms of Song of Achilles. So I can completely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Also, I think with the other one, even though I haven't read it, I know what it's about, and that's actually why it's on my shelf. So I can see why it's probably not for everybody. It's like a particular kind of reader, but I think it might be up my alley. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, I can imagine you actually might quite like it. It seems you might be your type of book, to be fair. And the last one on my list then is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I really liked Powerless. I actually like the little book that she is, Powerful, the wee one that she released in between. I loved it. It's my favorite in that series. I probably will pick up the rest of the series just to see what happens. And there is, as I said, the rooftop scene in that book was like it for me. It was like chef's kiss, so good.
Yeah.
But the whole book could have been done in like 5 chapters. Like
that
it was
crazy.
I don't know how to explain this. The last Harry Potter movie, or the last 2 Harry Potter movies, the first one, the Deathly Hallows Part 1, when they're like camping, and it just is, the whole movie is just them in the forest in a tent, and it's so dragged out. That's what that book felt like. A lot of it is them traveling and them on their way to something big, but the big thing isn't happening, and then there's like another like POV that's like leading up to something big, but the something big hasn't happened, like, and then at the end the big thing happens. And that's like one of the reasons I'll probably reread the next one, is to see what happens after this, because the way that it's been led up, the way that Reckless was written, the way that it's led, the next book could be very, very good. Like very, very good, with the choice that she has made to end the previous book on. But it could have been merged into Powerless.
That's so unfortunate, because it was set up so well. Yeah.
The first book so good. The setup for the second book was so good, but the second book dipped. Now the setup for the next book, you've got a very good thing to build on there. So I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't fumble.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Crimson.
Anyway, yeah, Crimson. What about you?
Oh, my turn. So I actually only have a few. I feel like this year I've done a really good job of like dodging all of the sort of overhyped and like maybe not so great reads. But I do have a few. So the first is one of the first books I read this year. Actually, I might have actually technically finished it at the end of last year, but I finished the whole series at the beginning of this year. So that would be Tower of Dawn. By Sarah J. Maas. I struggled so hard with that book, and actually I think it was made even worse by my involvement on Book Talk a little bit, because as I was reading through the series and vlogging, every time I would complain about Kale, which is a lot, people would be like, just wait for Tower of Dawn. Just wait for Tower of Dawn. And let me tell you, that book didn't change my mind, even like a little bit. Like, I really don't like being in that man's head. It just wasn't for me. And like, he's one of the few characters, and I know I've said this before, I maybe even said this last in the first pod, is that at least with other characters that I dislike, I can usually understand why people are so enamored with them. With Kale, I can understand why people aren't mad at him anymore, but I really just like don't get what people see.
No.
Like, I really, it doesn't click for me at all. Like, especially when they're like, I've loved him from the beginning. I'm like, you have
Like
all
hell have you loved him.
Like, there's all these magical fae prince men like just around. And then you got this guy who's, you know, he's got brown hair and he's a cop. Like, what are we excited about? Like, I don't understand.
He's just a man, him with your car.
Exactly. He's just a guy.
Him being there, Kale makes me laugh because it's very like, because I don't get mad for me comparing this character. Actually, Molly, I don't know if you'll, or how you'll feel about this, but you know, like in the Vampire Diaries, there's like all of these like mythical people, and then there's just Matt Donovan in the middle, who's just like this human who's just like an issue, and like bless him, he tries so hard. That's Kale.
Yeah. It's I don't know. So that really didn't hit for me. I really wasn't grateful for it. I really was like, especially because I saw pacing issues in Empire of Storms. Like, in Empire of Storms, I felt like we were in the circus for a really long time. Like, don't get me wrong, oiled up Lorcan is great, but I needed that like once, and then that was all the circus I needed. And then I don't know how long someone can bleed out before they die. I have a feeling that we defied the laws of medicine a bit. So I just felt that the pacing, you could have really made the two books not parallel maybe, and had like a midpoint, and you could have fixed it without giving Kale a whole freaking book.
Kind of like Lord of the Rings. So in one of the Lord of the Rings books, when they are following the hobbits, where they're at different points, like throughout, you know, Middle Earth, it goes back in time to like where we last saw them. And I feel like that probably would have been such a better alternative than giving Kale a whole book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just not for me. So that was the first one on the list. Although I do, you know, like, there's nothing super wrong with the writing. It just wasn't a story that I was interested in, and I really just don't like him as a character, and so it made it really painful for me. Once we get to the part with Nesrin's story, that was a little bit easier for me to enjoy, because I did actually really enjoy the elements of the book that were about her. But overall, not grateful for the book. The second one would be, and this one will be quick because it was a DNF, A Love Letter to Whiskey. I did that as a buddy read. I honestly don't even remember who wrote it, but it just, that was god awful. It was such a bad experience, and I tried so hard to get through it because the person I buddy read it with, like, just wanted, like, finish the whole thing thinking that I was going to catch up to her, and I just couldn't do it. It was just one of those, like, I should have just bowed out in the first few pages. Like, nope, I'm not doing it. Really bad. And then the other one that is a super popular book talk read that I just could not connect with, and that I hated so much, was Magnolia Parks. I do not understand why people like this book. I don't get
everywhere.
It's on my list.
Yeah. So the thing about it, what I knew about it going in was that it's about British socialites, and it's about like a toxic romance, and that they had been together before, but that they're not together now because of the toxicity, and the story is basically about that. And that's true, but when I think fictional toxic romance, and what I had seen a lot of people not like it for was like how toxic the romance is. They just didn't like it because of the toxicity. I don't get that, because honestly, if you're telling me it's a crazy toxic romance, I'm expecting like tires to be slashed. I'm expecting people to lose their jobs. I'm expecting like toxic, and
like
it was
Gossip Girl
like,
level.
Yes, and instead it was like, oh, like he's constantly, you know, screwing a string of girls and they're not together, but she's still pissed about it because he cheated on her. And she's like fake dating this other guy to make him jealous. And it's just like, it felt so, forgive me, it felt so pedestrian. Like it just was like very like, and then also literally nothing happens in the book. Like it's literally just like scene after scene of them going to a party, being mad at each other, going to another party, being mad at each other. There's zero spice on any pages. It's just like, what are we reading? Like, what is happening? Like, nothing is happening in this book.
What's
And
the
then
point?
I don't know. And then everybody told me that there was this crazy twist at the end. So I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna keep hate reading this to see what the twist is. And I didn't even notice that the twist happened because I had figured it out so early, and I just didn't think of it. I didn't even think it was a secret. I thought it was like, we all, the reader, know this thing. She doesn't really know because she's being willfully ignorant. And then like you find out what it is, and apparently you're supposed to be shocked. And I was like, oh, I just thought we all assumed it was one. The twist is just who he cheated with, right? And it's like, I just figured out it had to be one of two people very early, and then by the midpoint it was like, oh, it's obviously that one. And so I didn't know it was a thing.
So like the character should be shocked, but nobody else was.
Well, that's what I thought, but then it turns out the whole internet was shocked. Like, so yeah, I don't
get that.
It was not a good time. I will not be continuing the series. I wish it's actually sitting, and I never unhaul books, but it's actually sitting on my dresser to take to the take a book, leave a book, because I'm never going to touch that book again. So
maybe you should ship it to me.
Oh, yeah, I can do that if you
want. I can pay you shipping and you can send it to me if you'd like.
I'm happy to. I
really want to read that.
It's bad energy.
Yeah, ship it.
It's not even that toxic, and it's just bad energy.
I love that we're saying that, and I'm like, I want to read that. That seems like a fun time.
I'll be interested to hear what you think of it. So I think that so the second book is about a different couple, and I think that one of them is involved in like a seedy underbelly of the world or whatever. So like that might be more interesting. But then the third book is again about this couple, and that made me go like, there's no way I can keep going. Like I can't come back to these idiots.
Let's give it like a couple of months, and Ali will come back and be like, why did you let me read this? This is the worst book ever.
Either that, or I'll be like, this is my dream book. Like, never, ever, ever taking
Give
you
me
Rex again. I love this. Give me all of your shit books.
It's just like, also the characters are not they're not really likable people in any way. Like it's like they have no substance to them. Like her whole thing, Magnolia's whole thing, is that she can clock anybody's outfit, like exactly what they're wearing, and that is like literally the whole personality. That's the whole thing. And
that is like the worst superpower that you could ever have.
Yeah. And then BJ, the man, is like just so immature, and like none of them have real jobs, and it's just kind of like, what's even going on? I don't know. I thought it was going to be very Gossip Girl, and it just didn't have enough substance to it to be Gossip Girl, is what I felt like.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But anyway, that was back in May, so there's only been 3 all year that have been that bad. So I think that's pretty good.
That's not bad for a full year's worth of reading.
Yeah, but I'm really interesting. I took a peek at Molly's list, and I'm very interested to hear her talk about these books.
Too.
Okay, so I'm assuming it's in relation to the first one. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I ate it up. I read it. It was okay. Definitely going to continue with the series, but the book made me mad. So it is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. So, my reasoning. I don't think it was given enough consideration before being published. So, we all know that it was published significantly faster than typical mainstream, publishing sequels. There was a lot to it that, the pacing was funny. It didn't give the same vibes as Fourth Wing. Whether it's because of what happens in the book, whether it's because, it needed a bit more tweaking before it was published. But I saw so many things in it that I was not vibing with. The ending being one of them. Okay, that ending, so much screw that ending. Like the whole existence of it. I can't say much because Crimson hasn't finished Fourth Wing, let alone started Iron Flame, but I feel like it was very reminiscent of other books. Like lots of different elements from different books have been taken to make this final like battle. Like I saw elements of Hunger Games, I saw elements of ACOTAR and Throne of Glass, and I'm just like, there is very minimal originality here, and I could see something coming the entirety of the book. Many of the plot lines I could see, like I figured out. So it was just really disappointing for me. And I had such high hopes, especially after Fourth Wing being as good as it is. So I'm really hoping that, you know, the additional time it's taken for Onyx, is it Onyx Flame? Onyx Storm? Onyx Storm to be published, that, you know, some of the things that were wrong with Iron Flame won't be repeated.
Yeah.
I've heard that before. I've heard that Iron Flame needed a big edit.
It did. It really did. I'm not saying that to like deter you from it, and obviously we'll have many conversations once you get to it, I'm sure, because you will probably see many of the things that I saw. But it was just disappointing.
I will say I'm not surprised at one thing you said, which is that there was something that you saw coming. I obviously have no idea what that is, but something I've already noticed, being only like halfway through Fourth Wing, is that the foreshadowing is not super subtle so far. Like it's pretty. I mean, even with what happens at Threshing, while it did surprise me because it wasn't really said that it could be possible before, like it, there was a lot of foreshadowing that something was going to happen that was crazy. And there was a lot of foreshadowing to the two different things that happened. And so I kind of predicted both of them, but just didn't think that they could both happen at the same time. So that's kind of interesting because I've noticed that a lot already. It's just that like she'll very like, even in the very beginning, I don't consider this a spoiler because it's in the first couple chapters, she's like this one guy is like, I'm not gonna die today, and you're like, yeah, that guy's gonna die today. Like it's kind of uses movie math more than book math, I would say.
Like there's predictability and then there's Iron Flame. So yeah,
I feel like it was such a shame that it came out so quickly after Fourth Wing, because I feel like it needed to go through the editing team another time. I definitely believe that, because there is some really good elements in that book, and I feel like the issue is that it's like slow, oh my god, this is amazing, slow, big massive thing, and then I feel like it could have been done a little bit differently. And there are some characters and some backstories, but there was things that I would have liked to be explored a little bit more in that book that there just wasn't.
Yeah, definitely. So that was like the main one that I kind of took beef with. Like I said, it's not like I'm not going to continue with the series, it's just I'm tentatively looking forward to Onyx Storm. Like, you know, I was excited after Fourth Wing, and now my like hopes have been dashed.
More scared than excited for Onyx Storm.
Yeah. Like where it's going to go, considering there's more books after this. You're just like, it was front loaded in the first book, and now it feels like, well, what's going to happen? You know? The second book was Where's Molly by H.D. Carlton. I read Hunting and Haunting Adeline for the first time this year. Now, don't get me wrong, they're okay. Like, the series is okay. But I don't think they're all that they're cracked up to be, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point in the future. But I don't get the hype surrounding them. Where's Molly is obviously a novella that is focused on a character that is brought up in the second book in the Haunting Adeline series. And I just felt that it was unnecessary, quite frankly. Like, I would have preferred the mystery surrounding that character, because it was very pedestrian and not particularly interesting. And I get that it's a novella and it's supposed to be short, but it was so rushed. Yeah, it felt like a waste of time, quite frankly. So that was my second one. And then my last book that I was not grateful for this year was Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I was so excited for this series because I know how beloved the series is and how obsessed people are with the TV series, but this book was not it. It just was not it. first of all, it's so long. It has no business being that long. It is so fucking long.
Mhm.
Second of all, why are people obsessed with Jamie Fraser?
Sorry, I might be an Outlander girly. So.
I'm sorry, but the book Jamie is trash. And
Oh.
I mean, I get some of the decisions she made surrounding his character, but like others, I was just like, are you serious? Like, really? I get that it was published a while ago. Like, I get that. So we've got to kind of take everything with a grain of salt here. But the one thing that I could not look past through the whole book was the way in which she outlines and uses rape as a plot device. Because it's not just once, it's not just twice, it's multiple times. And one thing that really stuck out for me in this book, and apparently it's an ongoing issue throughout the whole series, but in this book specifically, they're talking about a bloke that attempted to sexually assault Jamie. And then then he comes back into the picture and they're like, oh yeah, he's quite cheeky, I like him. I'm like, I'm sorry, he was the one that, he's the one that tried to like sexually assault your husband, and you're saying that you think he's kind of like a cool guy, and he agrees with her. And I'm just like, are you all delusional? Like, they have quite literally like laid out that he is, you know, a really shitty character, a really bad guy, and they're like, oh, you know, he's quite funny. Like, fuck off.
It could be fun.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I can totally understand that. It's the way I think about Outlander. So I got into the show a little bit more before I started reading the books, and then after the first few episodes of the show, I like binged the first 3 books, I think, and then at some point I fell off because the story got kind of like boring, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I was really taken in with it. That plot line in particular only kind of gets worse because there is like, you know, real essay does happen. It's like very graphic and it's really difficult to read. The thing about that series though that I find interesting is that I started reading it when the series came out, I think like almost 10 years ago now. And at the time, nobody really told me like this is a romance book. It was more like this is a historical fiction book. But in recent years, I've seen it get pushed as if like the whole point of it is the romance. And what's interesting is like it does not sit in the romance section or in the fantasy section or in the sci-fi section. It sits in the fiction section. And that is for like a reason. Like it's not really supposed to be about the romance, which in the books is not, I mean, there's romantic moments, but it's not like it's not the only focus. Like, for a big portion of the first book, her focus is like, how the hell do I go back home? And things like that. And then that whole sequence, I think, makes more sense in the sequence of like a historical fiction rather than a romance, because historically things like that would happen, but you would just never put it in a modern romance novel because it's so unnecessary in that context. And I think I don't know. I feel like it gets wrecked kind of
there was just so much of it. It's like every like fourth of the book it's mentioned, and then obviously at the end of the book that happens, and I'm just like, was all of this necessary? And like I was kind of like wondering if I was alone in this, and spoiler, I wasn't.
I don't think so.
And apparently it's like an ongoing thing as the books progress. And I was just like, yeah, no, this series just isn't for me. Like it had such promise. And I was like, this looks like something I'd be really interested in. And there were elements such as the witch that I enjoyed and how she was relevant. I was like, she's a really cool character. But yeah, no, it just...
I think actually that's interesting because a gripe I have with the show is that they cover that plot line in the first season that corresponds with the first book, and then every similar plot line they sort of like drop later, and I think it actually makes it kind of a poor adaptation because you're like, and I mean maybe that's good, like maybe it was good for the viewership or good for like the story, but I actually think in the later seasons there's really no cohesive plot. Like it's really just like we just like watch one thing happen and then another thing happens and another thing happens, and it goes like so fast through the years that because the series goes all the way until they're, you know, like old, and kind of like picks back up with the newest generation, like their kids. So it's just kind of, I don't know, it's I think it falls off for sure.
Yeah.
But that's interesting because I haven't. Most of the people I've known who've read the first book really love it, and then it's not till like later that people tend to fall out of the series.
Yeah, no, not for
But I
me.
think
Not
that's
something I'll continue.
yeah, I totally get that. It's a totally valid criticism, I think. I think too, I think we have to find a stopping point. I know we could talk about books forever.
We could.
Uh,
We do.
but unfortunately, I'm sure we all have things to do, and our readers probably have things that they need to do as well. Readers or listeners have things that they need to do as well. So to wrap it up a little bit, let's just go over what our plans are for this week. Like, what are we going to be reading this week, guys? Molly, do you want to start?
I can, yeah. So I am currently reading Spookily Yours by Jennifer Chipman. It is following a witch who finds a cat who isn't actually a cat, but a demon that's been trapped in a cat's form. And
That sounds good.
It's really cute so far. I will keep you up to date. I'm hoping to get to Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I finished Caraval last month, or the month before, and obviously I want to get to her next trilogy before the end of the year. I'm also just a little bit into A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon by Sarah Hawley, so I kind of want to pick that up again. And I'm also wanting to touch on The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. So, yeah.
I am interested to see what you think of Once Upon a Broken Heart, because this will come to no surprise. I have said this on the internet a couple of times. I hated Caraval. Hated it. Hated it. Was really bored the whole time, but I really liked Once Upon a Broken Heart.
I will definitely let you know. I loved Caraval. So, you know, it's kind of crazy how friends who have so much in common and love the same books sometimes have differing opinions, you know? But I'm looking forward to chat with you about it.
I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that one. I don't know whether I'm going to get, because Spectacular is the new one, right?
It is.
There's
yeah.
another book.
It's like,
I don't know if I want to pick it up. I don't know. I haven't
I don't
decided.
know. I mean, if you didn't like Caraval, I feel like you're probably not going to like Spectacular, because it's a holiday novella that focuses on the Caraval characters and not the Once Upon a Broken Heart characters. So it may not be for you.
Then. Maybe if I'm like bored and in between books, I might pick it up.
Yeah.
Right.
What about you, Ali?
Well, I'm currently reading The Dagger and the Flame, and of course I want to finish that, and I need to start the Twilight book, because of obviously we're in the middle of the buddy read, and I haven't even started the buddy read, so
I
will be ordering that.
I wouldn't say we. I'd say Molly's in the middle of the buddy read.
Molly has started the buddy read, and we haven't.
I'm leading the buddy read right now.
Ooh, there you go. That's a way better way to say it. She's leading us.
Yeah, she is. We're following in her footsteps very slowly. Yeah, so The Dagger and the Flame is first on my list, and I really want to try and make use this month of my Kindle Unlimited subscription, because I've had it for a while, and I had it for a couple of months free, and then I had it a couple of months, so it was like half price, but I'm paying for the full thing this month. And I read Quicksilver on Kindle Unlimited, and I read Metal Slinger on Kindle Unlimited. So the next books, obviously I want to read the Zodiac Academy, so I'll maybe pick that up soon, but I really want to read Spark of the Everflame, because it's everywhere. Apparently it's so good. So I really want to read Spark of the Everflame. So that's sort of where I'm going to be. Oh, and there's a couple of extra books that are coming out very soon. So what's that series called? The series that's got Swift and Saddled in it. The third one's just about to come out.
Yeah.
And the second book in one of my favourite series, even though there's only one book out at the moment, Curious Tides. The second Curious Tides book comes out in like a week, and I really want to read that as well.
So exciting.
What about you, Crimson?
So for me, finishing up Leather and Lark, I've only got like 60 pages left, so I'll probably finish that tonight. Loving it. I mean, like I said, it's Marriage of Convenience. Love a Marriage of Convenience. I think I might even like it more than Butcher and Blackbird, which I know is not the take a lot of dark romance girlies have.
That's
but
controversial, because I've seen a lot of like, this book isn't as good as Butcher and Blackbird.
So it's less gory. Like, it's much less gory. There's still some gore, but less. But I don't know. I'm vibing with the plot a lot more. I felt like in Butcher and Blackbird, It was very, like, I had an amazing time. I think I gave that book like 4.5 stars, but it was like, you know, it goes from like, it's a lot of vignettes of them doing the game that they do. And they all kind of correspond quite obviously to like classic horror films, really. And that was so fun. And it was such a great thing, but the romance itself just sort of falls into place. There's not a lot of strife or angst going on.
Yeah.
And so for me, I like there to be a little bit more like grit to it. So
yeah.
for me, Leather and Lark is more of that, because there's a reason that they don't think that it can work out, and that it's just going to be a marriage of convenience, and there's a plot going on in the background that doesn't have to take full center stage, but that they're working towards all the time. And so it just feels more cohesive to me, and like I'm just loving it. I also think that I sort of prefer this MMC to the first MMC.
Ooh,
like
interesting.
Yeah, he's like broody and grumpy, but also like really wants, like, he spends a lot of time once he falls for her, like trying to make her life easier, like, and trying to make sure she's taken care of, but without like, you know, like dimming her light or anything like that. It's just really beautiful. It's like the
I
dream.
love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
I do love that for you.
Like he takes her to a sleep retreat because she's not sleeping. Doesn't even ask.
Aw.
Like, pass a bag. I'm like, that's the most romantic thing I've ever seen in my life.
Bless his heart.
Bless him. So yeah, I'm loving it. And then of course, Twilight Buddy Read, I will be starting that tonight so that I can give Molly some company. And
Please do.
I will also be working in parallel on Fourth Wing. And then in my delusional brain, who thinks that I'm going to do all of this in the next few days,
Yeah, this is not all happening at once.
Yeah, but it totally is. And then I'm going to move on to Wolfsong. So yeah, that's the plan.
We live in the land of Delulu. We've got this.
Yes.
It's totally achievable.
It's completely reasonable goals. Totally.
Oh my
fab.
goodness.
Okay, well, thank you guys for, again, being my besties forever and ever. You're stuck with me now. Unless your man kills me for a birthday present, you know, that's the...
Okay, but if he does, we can like taxidermy you, and then we can still be together.
We'll still talk to you.
Like,
it's all good.
Yeah, you could just prop me up at the side of the pod. She's mute from now on, but
no, we'll do it via seance.
She's here.
Get a little keyboard.
Seance me in.
You know, I've actually watched not one but 2 TV shows that involve taxidermy humans in the past couple months, so maybe it's meant to be.
Crimson's prepared.
Yeah, she's got this.
Yeah. Totally.
Oh dear. But yeah, thank you for listening to everyone who tuned in for this episode of the podcast. As usual, we have all of the social media will be linked down below for the podcast and for each of us individually as well. And we will see you all in the next episode. See you later, everyone.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.